Very warm welcome to all our distinguished panelists. Before I introduce the panelists, let me talk a little bit about Schoolversity, the talk show that we have launched. And we've had quite a few sessions and very, very successful sessions. The thought behind the Schoolversity talk show was, to have a platform where we as educators, both at the school education level or at the university education level, and stakeholders in the education sector can come together and have a platform to have conversation around some of the key issues, challenges, policy discussions that we need to have in the context of the current education landscape. And we felt that a bridge was required and a conversation was required between, educators on some of these topics. Why we thought of, doing our first series on the national education policy is that it is one of the most burning conversations as far as education landscape in India is concerned currently. The National Education Policy 2020, which came after a gap of nearly 34 years from the last policy. Now, this is the third national education policy. It envisages education in ways that, other education policies have not, right? So as far as, for example, higher education is concerned, it talks about opening up Indian higher education to foreign universities. It talks about dismantling institutions like UGC, University Grants Commission, and the All India Council for Technical Education. It talks about introducing a 4-year multidisciplinary undergraduate program with multiple entry-exit options. It talks about an academic bank of credit. It talks about a discontinuation of MPhil. It talks about multidisciplinary research universities. Right? So the way it talks about vocational education, so the way it imagining higher education is in new, innovative, creative ways. And the same goes for school education. Right? Now, in the context of school education, for example, it talks about having, praxis-based learning, experiential learning, focus on critical thinking, that the syllabus should retain some core essentials, that, unlike the earlier education policy, the 86 one, which, pushed for a 10+2 structure of school education, the 2020 NEP pitches for a 5+3+3+4 design, focus on mother tongue or regional languages, again, the focus on vocational education, and so on and so forth. So how do we as educators, both at higher education institutions and at school institutions, can come together to understand the possibilities that NEP opens up, and also the challenges that it throws at us, and what are the best ways to sort of navigate these challenges. And we as an institution of higher education, most importantly, as an institution of eminence, we have been recognized by Ministry of Education, Government of India. And we recognize that, we as universities do not operate in a silos. We cannot talk about interdisciplinarity and multidisciplinarity and research-driven, praxis-based, curriculum, but we are looking at the schools for the students to come in and experience this interdisciplinarity. So what kind of understandings that can seep into at the school level, and what can we do as universities to make that process seamless, or this transition from school to university a smooth one. So that is the context and the thought process behind the talk show. And now it gives me immense pleasure, and it is my privilege to introduce our distinguished panelists for the evening. We have with us Ms. Sunita Nambiar. She is the Educational Director and CEO of Kunskapsskolan, India. So welcome, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining in. We have Dr. Shivani Sahni. She is the principal HRM Global School. Welcome to the panel. We have Ms. Lipika Kale. She is a senior educationist, and ma'am, we are very happy to have you with us today. And we have Mr. Rajesh Sharma, principal Ambuja Vidya Niketan School. So again, a very warm welcome to all the distinguished panelists. Thank you so much for taking out time from your busy schedule and gracing this panel with your presence. What we would do is perhaps, Ms. Nambiar, I would want to come to you for your opening remarks and reflections on the topic at hand. And we will then go to each of the panelists to hear their thought and reflections. And then we would try and have a few questions that each one of the panelists can respond to before we conclude. So that's going to be the structure of the talk show. With that, Ms. Nambiar, may I request you to please share your reflections on the topic?
All right. Good evening. It's a great pleasure to be here and share my thoughts on the NEP. I'm sure there's been a lot of conversation over the last 1 year about NEP and what it entails and what it has brought to the table. I tend to liken it a little bit like an onion, many layers, and each one of them having the potential to have a significant impact on education, teaching, learning, and how it will be implemented in schools and colleges. When I was listening to you, I was just thinking about the fact that for the last 7 decades, right, traditionally we have always had a single disciplinary educational approach. That's what we have been following, right? But however, things have changed so drastically in these years, whether we are talking about the work environment, or we're talking about expectations from employees, or the challenges both industry and business faces world over. It has changed so significantly. As a lifelong teacher, I believe that education is aimed at preparing students to be successful and contribute to the community they live in as well as the world over, right? In a world which is so filled with disruptions, that's the norm right now, I think building skills in students has become so imperative. And if I was to just go back a little and think about, what did the World Economic Forum a few years ago talk about? We spoke essentially about building foundational skills. We spoke about competency-based learning. We spoke about building character qualities. And these are some of the things that our students need to be prepared in. They also, I think, need to be prepared in the different careers that are going to be a part of their life going forward. 10 years from now, jobs that exist today are not going to be there, or are going to be so diversified and so specialized that they will need to have a completely different set of skills to be successful. Today, we are talking about things like industrial psychologists, surgeons, food stylists, influencers, ethical hackers. So these are things that we never even spoke about a few years ago. So then how do we prepare our students? We're also talking about the fact that in another decade, we are going to have about 40% of employment, which is going to be a gig economy. Now, if 40% of our employment is going to be gig economies, then we know for a fact that our students will need to have many more skills and understanding than just their domain knowledge, right? So therefore, whether it is to understand how to do client facing or budget management or project management or problem solving, they are all skills that our students will require when they are going to become independent workers, consultants, or running startups of their own. So I think for me, when I look at all of this for me is the core reason for us to embrace the NEP. And I think the NEP has actually set the stage for us to be able to really present new learning approaches for our students. And I think if it is implemented both in letter and spirit, I think the biggest change is going to be in the learning environment in schools as well as the learning processes that students follow. And one of the key things that is definitely going to be impactful is multidisciplinary learning, right? I don't think siloed learning is going to help us in any way going forward now. We need to get the children to understand interconnectedness that exists. I know that as far as I think the Kothari Commission, which spoke about the fact that there has to be some amount of science learning when you're doing social sciences and humanities and vice versa. I mean, so that's just the tip of the iceberg. There is so much more when it comes to making learning multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary. So if I was to take a simple example, I mean, so you can take a literary text, for example, and use that to introduce a science concept or a mathematical skill or understanding literal meaning, vocabulary, values, comparing and contrasting, problem solving. All the skills that we're talking about can be actually made available to the student if we take that approach in schools. If I was to talk about what we are doing in Kunskapsskolan, for example, we've had multidisciplinary approaches right from the beginning. So we have what we call as a thematic course, which we follow, wherein whether I'm looking at science, social science, computers, art, music, dance, they're all integrated into a theme. So the student studies a theme. He doesn't study a subject. And therefore, when you're able to approach learning in that thematic manner, what you're actually creating for them is to understand the interconnectedness. You're able to also, therefore, able to let them see things in very different perspectives. They're not looking at it as a subject knowledge. They're looking at it as a concept that needs to be understood. For me, I think that's the way forward. That I think allows students to explore from different angles. It allows them also to see things the way it is in real life, right? It's not, life is not in boxes, right? They are interconnected. And if we can present that for our students, I think it makes it so much more meaningful for a child to learn it. Like you mentioned, there is already, when you're talking about the NEP and we're talking about higher education, we're talking about multidisciplinarity in that field or in that space now, we need to prepare our students for that, right? So that, like you said, it has to be a seamless transition for our students from schools to colleges, for them to understand that they're not studying, physics, chemistry, and biology, but they are learning a particular event or a particular concept that has multiple aspects that come together to create that event. But I think the challenge that's going to be, of course, is the fact that the way our schools are structured, we need to restructure. There has to be a greater level of collaboration that needs to happen if this needs to be successful. And when I say collaboration, I mean collaboration between teachers and teachers, or between teachers and students, or between students and students, because it's a matter of dialogue. It's like a student having to learn something from 5 different teachers rather than learning it from one teacher. And so those 5 teachers need to collaborate to give a seamless content or a seamless understanding to the student. So therefore, the way we structure our school will need to change. I think the other thing that will need to be different has to be the way we are assessing learning. So if I am looking at a multidisciplinary approach, then how do I assess it? Do I assess it as a science teacher, or do I assess it as an assessment of understanding of a concept? Right? And therefore, there again, assessment will need to be largely formative in nature, less summative in nature, and more transdisciplinary than singular disciplinary. So these are all the things that I keep thinking about. And I said, this actually then lends itself to the idea of flexi subject choices for a student. Rather than having streams, which we now have, we have the science stream and the commerce stream and humanities stream. I think it would be brilliant if we can allow students to just pick up subjects of their choice. And again, I'm going to talk about how we do it in Kunskapsskolan, is where when the student comes in after grade 10 to grade 11, the first 1 week, we let the children just go and explore any class that they want to. So we have a bucket of subjects. And we say, just go into every class explore it, spend some time there, understand what the subject is all about, understand what you're going to learn from that subject, and then come back to us a week later and say, what are the subject choices of yours? Now, again, to me, one, it allows the student to understand or get an experience of the different subjects and what it means, and what, whether that, picks his interest, whether that's something that he's passionate about, and whether that intrinsically motivates him to learn. So I think that's the first thing. I think the second thing is the student then has a voice in the matter and a choice in the matter, rather than you just giving him a basket and saying, well, this is the basket you have to run with. So I think these are some of the things that if education in schools can bring about, it will make a change and make the transition to higher education and the multidisciplinary approach that we're talking about in colleges possible. I also think that there has to be a greater integration or conversation happening between colleges and schools. What is the expectation from students stepping out of a grade 12 or a grade 10, coming into a college? I think that conversation, that dialogue, that open dialogue between schools and colleges, I think needs to be strengthened so that we at the school level are able to prepare them better for what the college expects of them. And I guess the same thing would be there for college and industry, because then you're preparing them to step into the industry. So I guess these are my thoughts. I hope I haven't gone beyond my time.
No, no, not at all. And thank you very much for sharing those reflections. I mean, you're absolutely right that it's like an onion. You peel the layers and sort of, some also sting the eye, and we'll come
Yes,
to that.
absolutely.
But some has the potential to really transform a dish. And that is brilliantly put. And I think that at the heart of it, Ms. Nambiar stands the point that you made, is that at the end of the day, education is about empowering the learners with a set of skills, and those set of skills will have to align with what is it that the industry demands. And the traditional way in which we understood a school education, or particularly higher education, is not the same anymore. I mean, once upon a time, an undergrad degree itself would have been enough. But it is not anymore. And it requires, and no matter what discipline have you done, for example, my disciplinary background is political science, international relations, my specialization is gender studies, but I do require project management and budget management skills. Anything that I do would require me to, apart from critical thinking and problem solving, some of the very real skills, which will enable me to then do very many things in terms of even research and collaborations that I do. What I take away is also your point about collaborations and a greater collaborations between colleges, universities, and schools. And I think the entire talk show is an effort towards that, or also to be able to create a platform is to see the ways in which this collaboration can be made possible. And you spoke also about students getting to do a choice in the first few weeks, going to all these classes and figuring out what is it they want to do. We do a similar thing here at our university, where actually we have this option of cross-registered electives. So so that means a student from, say, an architecture school can do an elective at an international affairs school or at an environmental school. So we have the system where at least for a week the students can go and look at electives, sit through the classes, and decide what is it that they want to continue with. Even in fact, during COVID, when it was not possible, we recorded as faculty, brief about the elective and shared the course curriculum and the reading list to all students so that they could make informed choices. So I think that is very, very important to be able to do that. So thank you very much for those points, Ms. Nambiar, and we will come back to you. And I would want to discuss a few of the challenges that NEP throws up, and what are the ways in which we could possibly navigate that challenge. Dr. Sahni, I would like to come to you taking off from what Ms. Nambiar said, I would love to hear your reflections on national education policy and the holistic multidisciplinary education that it proposes.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Upasana, for having me here. In fact, I would say that Ms. Nambiar has already summed up NEP in a very beautiful way. And there is no doubt, there are no second thoughts about the beauty of NEP, about the advantages of NEP. When we talk about education, in fact, for me, education, and I believe for all the educators, education is not just understanding or learning, but it is education for life. Because that's what we aim to train our students to. Right. So when we talk about those 4 pillars of education, so I think NEP has very beautifully ingrained all those 4 pillars, which is learning to know. So when we start about learning to know, it's all about the cognitive domain, about mastering the skills, like literacy, numeracy, and all. So when you were talking about the structural change of 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4. So there the major emphasis being given to the literacy and numeracy to start in the 5 years. I think that is one very beautiful move. Because when we look at Finland and other countries like Denmark and all, we look at their education patterns, and there the children are not at that very young age that they are going to the schools, but they still do much better in terms of education that they do. So I think adding that 1 year into whether we call it the pre-nursery or all, that would enhance a lot of skills in the children, like the fine motor skills and the development of the brain, etc. So in a play-way manner. So I think that is one very essential and very beautiful thing incorporated. Then the second pillar that we talk about, learning to do, which is all about acquiring the higher skills, which will help any individual to effectively participate. Also to collaborate, contribute in the global economy. So like initiative taking, readiness to risk, as you were mentioning about, the leadership negotiation skills, you were mentioning about project management. So being an educationist, even I did my Prince 2, because, it enhances my skills further. And I really see that happening. I had been involved, I'll give my particular example here. I'd been involved in starting up schools. So this is like my 3rd startup, and having done project management has really helped me a lot. So I think when we are doing this multidisciplinary thing in schools as well as in colleges itself, it is certainly going to support the children. The 3rd one, which is learning to be, as in being aware of the self. So that's equally important, because it involves about the understanding of one's emotions and the personal goals. Unless the child, as Ms. Nambiar was mentioning about giving 1 week of the choice of to the children to sit into any subject classes and finally make a decision for themselves, to create a goal for themselves. So for me, again, I would say this is really very valuable. And last but not the least, learning to live together, collaboration, because nothing happens with a single hand. We ought to work in teams, and that's what it also talks about when we talk about the project works, the project-based learning, the experiential learning. So there is not a single child who is going to be doing a particular activity, but as a group, a lot of activities and the assessments of the children are happening on all of those things. So considering all of these points, I really see NEP to be a boon. However, besides just talking about the advantages, I see a lot of area where there are fears in me. Why? Because it goes through the leadership. Now, people like us who are working in the private sectors in these kind of educational institutions like Kunskapsskolan, like HRM, Presidium. So these schools are already incorporating a lot of the things which are being proposed by NEP now. Like ma'am was mentioning about thematic learning. So I was also doing the theme-based learning and project-based learning, which was an integrated approach of all the subjects being blended together, and the children were learning the concepts. And at the end, they were culminating those projects. So when they were culminating those projects, not only that they were understanding about the particular concepts like of science, mathematics, Hindi, or other languages, but also skills like event management, marketing. Like for example, um, uh, we are doing a project in grade 4 called From Farm to Plate. So the culmination of that project is while you start seeing from how the farming happens, it is like organic farming and farming with the fertilizers and all. So the entire route, how it reaches to the plate of a person while you are having your food in a restaurant or at home. So the culmination is creating your own restaurant. And there the children are divided into different groups, so they choose for themselves. They, in the process, they are visiting the farms, in the process they are visiting the restaurants where they're seeing how the food is being prepared, where they're interviewing. So they are the skills of preparing questionnaire, such kind of skills are getting developed. The confidence is getting developed, wherein they are actually asking those questions to the manager of the restaurant, to how they are making the bills, how the taxes are being implied, all of these things. So then they are creating, when they're creating their own restaurant at the end, they are deciding about what kind of menu, how would they be marketing that, right? So how are they going to set up that within that premise, as in this is the area, how they are going to ask for a loan from their principal. So they need to write an application for seeking for the loan, how they are going to return it back. So this is the kind of costing they need to keep, so that they earn profits, they make profits out of that. And then so such kind of things, a lot of schools like us have already been doing. However, very recently, when the first term boards were there, and I happened to be visiting there as, to supervise or to observe as an observer for the first term exams, it was such a sorry state. I felt really sad seeing that the similar is not the case in those kinds of schools where the leadership isn't intrinsically motivated. CBSE is doing a lot towards that. There are a lot of training sessions. There was a 5-day training session for the principals that was conducted. Believe you me, there were hardly, you could see few people screen, and those two, the public schools, which are the non-funded schools, their principals interacting and their principals interacting and their principals contributing, creating the annual progression plan and all of those things, but not any of the government schools or any of those things. So there is my fear that the government wants to really do a lot. We are really want to look into creating our futures. We are really wanting to bring into that. But is it going to be restricted to a limited number? Is it going to be restricted to a set? Who all are going to be coming from those schools to the colleges like Jindal, Jindal, like Amity, like Shivnadar, So the point that I want to put in here is that, are we, in spite of bringing in these kind of changes in our education policies, still will be able to really hit the nail? A wonderful example I would quote is about CCE, Continuous and Comprehensive Evaluation, which was such a wonderful system. Ms. Nambiar just mentioned more of formative assessments and less of summative assessment. Yes, I completely agree with her that yes, more of formative assessments. Why can't we do away with summative assessments? Why can't we do just rubric system? Why can't we just do assessment as learning, as in when we are just probing the children and just doing the learning with that? How many of our teachers are really trained on multiple intelligences? How many of our teachers are really creating their lesson plans based on Bloom's taxonomy or multiple intelligences? Again, that's very limited, right? So there are my fears. A lot of people are still not aware of the MOOCs. There is so much that is available on CBSE websites. Diksha, there is so much available on, and these are all free of cost. But who goes back home after teaching and opens and does these, a handful of them. Now, what kind of motivation? So I am not really going to only talk of, the beautiful part of it, but yes, this is one ugly part of it that we need to really think about how to pull that up. And I think people like us only have to take, maybe adopt one school. I don't know, but that's just one idea. So adopting a nearby school, sharing our best practices with them, bringing their children to our schools. So of course, there needs to be the agreement of the managements also into this. Like there was a program like Each One Teach One. So this is one thing that comes to my mind quite often, and I really am planning that I break this ice. I'm able to break this ice one day, and wherever I would be working, I'll be able to convince my management to at least adopt one school or something like that. So these are my thoughts.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Sahni. And your thoughts are absolutely valid, and your fears I'm sure would be shared by others in the panel as well. And some of the things that you've highlighted are actually some things that I would want to hear the reflections of other panelists on. Is, for example, the importance of teachers training. That we can talk about multidisciplinarity, we can talk about new and innovative ways of learning, but do we have trained teachers who are able to execute the vision of the NEP? For example, while it's a great idea, you would want to have, say, give the kids an option. But if only 3 kids opt for music, is it a financially viable decision for a school to keep a music teacher? And just for 3 students. So in that case, what happens? What are about the students who want to make those choices, or what will happen to programs like this? I like the idea about adoption, or perhaps something that Ms. Nambiar spoke about in terms of collaborations. Is what are the ways that we could then support efforts? And it's a similar kind of thought, Dr. Sahni. If you think of, say, in the context of an institution of higher education, there is the, say, option of the academic bank of credit, and there is the option of multiple entry and exit, and also the option that a student can do, say, one course from one say university or college, another course from another one, and put the credit in the credit pool. But then are all universities at par when it comes to curriculum and pedagogy, the way it is pitched, the way the teaching learning process is happening? So there are a lot of other issues that need to be sort of handled and navigated through to be arrive at the point of that multidisciplinarity and interdisciplinarity that it envisages. So thank you very much. And of course, the point about assessment, I think this is something also, again, I would want to hear the reflections of other panelists as well, as to how do we assess a child. And this is, again, not only at the various schools levels, but also, when you want to come into the university system, on what basis are you evaluating the candidature of somebody to come into an institution of higher education? For example, Delhi University for the longest time, 98, 99, 99.99, it was, and at
100.
School, 100. And at the school, you keep telling your kids that, go, do debate and do perform and, learn and do project-based learning and all of that. And moment class 12, you're like, no, none of that is good enough. If you're not 100, then everything else falls through. So as universities, what are our responsibilities in terms of, assessing the qualifications of a child who wants to come into the university system post school. And now we are talking about the central entrance test for the central universities. Any university wants to go their way. So what could be the possible, say, positives and negatives of that? But with that, I would want to come to Mr. Rajesh Sharma. Mr. Sharma, your thoughts and reflections on the topic, and also some of the points that have come out from the earlier two panelists, both in terms of the vision and the possibilities that NEP represents vis-a-vis the fears and the challenges that one sees. Yes, Mr. Sharma, over to you.
So once again, good evening to all. And again, I totally agree with Ms. Sunita and Dr. Shivani, whatever they expressed. And before addressing their challenges, a few things I will put forth, and then definitely I will also interact about. Basically, I will just share my background. I am working with the school, which is industrial background. So Ambuja Cements, all of you know that one. So it's an industrial school, and we have a different setup, and it is a remotely located school, but competent enough to handle all the things. Now coming back to our multidisciplinary and holistic approach about this national education policy new one. Now we need to understand few things like in today's scenario, what are the challenges faced by us? So there is a lot of rapid changes in this knowledge bank. So a lot of things are being created. So scientific, digital, and technological advancement is happening at a rapid pace. And somehow we are not able to adjust with this pace. Then same way now, artificial intelligence, machine learning, all these things are coming up. They are taking the unskilled job. So employment scenario is also changing during the pandemic. A lot of people, they lost their employment. Few employment opportunities completely closed down. New employment opportunities have happened. But again, the system is not ready to quickly adjust. Same thing for our learner as well as us. Then a lot of things are happening around climate change and other scenario that also we need to consider, because we are teaching kids. So we are focusing on sustainable development. So they should be aware of environmental issues also. So that is also another challenge. Then energy challenge also we are facing. So these are all the challenges right now we are facing. Then pandemic, how to handle the pandemic. So considering all these challenges recently in the last 2 years, everything, it is again 360-degree turn up and down. So now we need a generation of the students who need to have a different kind of skills. All the skills already narrated by both the speakers. So I will again not repeat those skills. But basically, like both the speaker, they opted for this collaborative learning, which should happen. And I think the principals or the panelists who are working with CBSE school, they may be knowing about hubs of learning. So through that also sharing with the nearby school, sharing your project, sharing your learning can be done. That was one thing. Coming back again to the skills, what we require. So basically sensitiveness towards environment, that is one thing. I will not repeat the skills which already shared by both the speakers. Then tolerance, nowadays, the things which are happening all around us, we know that. So how our students can be more tolerant to handle this one. And during this time, a lot of digital revolution happened. So how to handle that revolution also, the students, they adapted very well, but teachers, they find it very tough. And there was a lot of collaboration between student and teachers. And together they made a lot of ways out, how can we enhance digital learning. Now, coming back to our school experience, I will share. Now, I have collaborated with Bombay Stock Exchange Institute for the last 7 years. I am doing financial literacy program. So how can we start from 6th standard onwards regarding money management? So this is I am doing for the last 7 years. Then now I collaborated with National Council for Financial Education. It is again a government agency. They have head office in Patalganga, Mumbai. So first I attended 2 days workshop 3-4 years back, and then we incorporated that financial literacy program in our school. It went very well, and NFLAT and NCFE, they supported a lot. And then we organized for this Chandrapur district, around 30 schools, we have organized training related with financial literacy. So that was a wonderful experience for me to collaborate related with this kind of, because nobody talks about financial literacy. We focus mostly on core subjects. These are the things. Now, my learning, last year I did IC3 Institute Career Counseling 1 year program, and it was such an enriching experience. So I collaborated with like speakers from OP Jindal, Kriya University, Ashoka, Shivani, Ahmedabad University. So I came to know about, and then foreign universities also. So I came to know about liberal arts. What is this liberal arts, liberal science, major, minors? So it was really a nice experience for me, and that now I have incorporated. So I interacted with my subject HODs because we have commerce and science, and next year we are planning to open humanities. So then we collaborated with our teachers along with these institutes and conducted various sessions for parents and student awareness. So that what kind of new employment opportunities are there, how can they polish their skills, how can they address the current issues. So these are a few things which we did. And recently CBSE in collaboration with Udyam, they launched this online entrepreneur skills. So 100 innovations were shortlisted, and our school's 4 students, their innovations were selected. And recently, 2 days back only, I got the notification from them. So that was also a very good experience. So teacher took initiative, and day to day, a lot of interaction happened with the resource persons from CBSE and other. And main thing, like other speakers, they said training, a lot of trainings are happening, but whether this training are implemented in the school by the teacher or not, that is the major challenge. So Diksha and I totally agree with Dr. Shivani that wonderful resource CBSE and other agencies, there is no shortage of resources. The problem is that too much resources coming just like a boxing, it is boxed on teachers, and they are not able to cope up with all these things. So we need to little bit slow down the things, and like for example, first year we can focus on few skills, few trainings, implementation. Step by step we can go, and definitely teacher will have also a breathing space, because adjusting with online education, then new things, lot of new things are happening. So it becomes tough for not only principal but also a teacher. Then coming back to both the speakers, they said now we have to also change our pedagogy method. So like already we have most of the schools, because ours is also industrial school, and we have 5 schools across India. We collaborate among ourselves as well as local schools through Sahodaya also, which is very active here in our part. Nagpur Sahodaya is very active. So we do a lot of collaboration with them there also. So pedagogy need to be experiential learning, competency-based education. That is also slowly and slowly we are introducing. Again, competency-based education training was available on self-learning module, but practically until as physical training happens, I don't think that teacher will get an idea. Same thing like Dr. Shivani and Mrs. Sunita also said, APP, that is annual pedagogical planning. Many of the principals were clueless. What is this one? They just conducted and did. But when the groups were created, 10 principals were clubbed together and they were advised to create, then that was a real challenge for the principals. So all these things are happening at a stage, so we need to little bit slow down. Again, coming back to assessment, multiple assessment strategies already has been working on. CBSE is creating resources with British Council. So, and again, we also need to do a lot, because CC is again coming back indirectly. Like Dr. Shivani said, it was a wonderful practice, but stopped by CBSE. Now again, it is coming back henceforth. So challenges, I feel the acclimatization of the teachers towards these new things, it will take a time. Then Mrs. Sunita, she quoted a very good thing like transition. Now, when we do transition of pre-primary kids into the first standard, we do orientation of parents and students. So now when the students, they move from college to, junior college or 12th standard to college, then we need to do a lot of collaboration with universities, have a lot of sessions to prepare the students for the future challenges and their college life also. So I think these are my few inputs regarding this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sharma. And actually, you brought a completely new perspective to the conversation, and very refreshing perspective that too. And I would really want to hear, and I will go to Ms. Lipika Kale after this. is that, what you see is that, there is no dearth of resources, but it is how those resources are being used and how they're executed is something that I want, that you want to focus on. You also speak about the scientific, the digital technological revolution that has happened, and what are the ways in which we can navigate that space as well. And you're right when you say about artificial intelligence, about automation, about, it says that by 2030, 30% of the work hours that we put in globally will be automated, which will be done by machines. So how does one understand skills and skills enhancement, and in the context of a very fast changing global reality? We've seen the pandemic, we've seen the environmental crisis, we've seen the technological revolution. So where does all of that stand? And most importantly, I find your thought on financial literacy and the fact that school children, and at a very young age, are being introduced. I wish somebody introduced me to the thought of financial literacy and money management, because this is something that we don't talk about, and this is not something that we put enough emphasis in. I mean, it is interesting because we've launched a program on MSc Finance at Jindal University at the School of Banking and Finance. But the fact that at a very early age, the thought of financial literacy itself needs to come in is a very, very interesting thought to me. So thank you very much for those reflections. Ms. Lipika Kale, over to you. You are muted. You're muted.
Thank you so much, dear. Actually, all of a sudden there was a technical glitch and my laptop stopped. So now I'm joining with my mobile. So I beg your pardon. I'm very sorry for that. I just can't help it.
So welcome digital revolution, madam.
No problem at all. This is exactly what Mr. Sharma was talking about.
Yeah. And unless and until I feel there's a technical glitch, I think things don't work smoothly. There has to be a glitch in order to work smoothly. I believe so.
However, see how resilient we've all become. So you bounced back immediately.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. Okay, first of all, before I start, good evening, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. And Miss Dr. Shivani was talking about this Each One Teach One project. So let me tell you, we have taken up Each One Teach One project in a very large scale. And we are working in a school on this project for the past 4-5 years. And the beautiful part of this project was that the children had picked up the students from the slums, their mates' kids, and some children who were working on the streets. So we had asked the children to teach them. So they used to bring them in the school, teach them. And then there was an examination conducted for those students. So they came to our school. The examination was conducted. Their parents came along and they were very happy to see that. So this particular project has given not only confidence to the kids, but also an insight, collaborative learning, collaborative in the sense that they used to ask the students as to what did they do, because they were earning for themselves. They were students, they were working on the streets to earn for themselves. So they used to teach our children, they used to tell our children some of the skills that they had. And of course, our students used to teach them. So I was very happy to you said that, you all are taking up Each One Teach One project. That's something. Another thing that we did was when we all were talking about adapting a school. Well, we, before, of course, this COVID had started, we had plans to go to a village, adopt a school over there, and then adopt the entire village. We had started working upon it, but fortunately or unfortunately, I would say, not fortunately, we could not complete that, but now we are trying to come back to that again. So, holistic and multidisciplinary education. Multidisciplinary is a beautiful word and a field, because when I was working as a career counselor, as Sir said that he was, for the first time, he heard the word liberal arts, liberal science. So was the case with me too. When I heard of the word liberal arts and liberal science, I think I was more excited than my students, because I started thinking, had I had that opportunity, maybe I could have developed or I could have chosen a different field. Not that I'm not happy with whatever I am or where I'm working, but this really attracted me. One of my students, she's studying in Cornell right now. She wanted to go to medicine, but her father was not agreeing, and the father wanted her to study computer science. So there she got an opportunity. She went over there. Though finally she did not take up medicine, she took computer sciences, and as a minor, she took up music because she was very fond of music. So this NEP, if this is giving us a chance to tell our students that this is what, I mean, they can become what they want to, is something beautiful. In this collaborative world where the heads of all the countries are thinking critically over the common problems being faced globally, I believe, education can be the only connect and can bring about solutions to this. The pedagogies and strategies of education need a revamping, and it should be made more experiential, holistic, multidisciplinary, inquiry-driven, and integrated. I also happen to teach biology in one of the junior classes, because that's a very favorite subject of mine. So while I had taken up this chapter, allergy, we thought of doing an experiential project with them. We call it as ELP projects. And I was really dazed, because even during the Corona period, when all the studies were going online, my students interviewed, my students found out the cause of certain allergies that they were learning. So I felt that this is really a beautiful way when we talk about teaching through, or rather learning through experiencing things. And I think that chapter was understood in a better way, when otherwise it goes on in a class where the teacher reads or speaks and the children listen. So that was one of the projects that was taken up. And after that, of course, many more projects were taken up. They were taken to a hospital to see that. As ma'am said, that when they were taken to a hotel, they learned so many things. Our students had gone to a hospital and they got a chance to serve the patients. So they learned about, as ma'am said, how to sit and register patients, how to take them to a doctor, what to do after that, and so on and so forth. So the gap between the current state of learning outcomes and what is required must be bridged through undertaking major reforms that bring the highest quality, equity, and integrity into the system, from early childhood care and education through higher education. National education policy lays particular emphasis on the development of the creative potential of each individual. It is based on the principle that education must develop not only cognitive capacities of literacy and numeracy, such as critical thinking, problem solving, but also social, ethical, and emotional capacities and disposition. There's a beautiful quote which I found, so I thought I'll share it with you all. Quote, "Your brain has a capacity for learning that is virtually limitless, which makes every human a potential genius." Unquote. We in our school, we believe that every child is potentially the light of the world. We need to tap them. We need to tap their capabilities and abilities and give them a free hand, which earlier I think when I was a student was not given to me. Another thing I like about this present or national education system is critical thinking and then questioning. When students keep on questioning, because what we feel is no question is wrong. Every question has to be answered in a way that the child gets the feeling that whatever he has asked is important. That importance has to be given to them, which in our school level, in our school, we are trying to do that. And I know most of the CBSE schools, though I am from an ICSE stream school, but most of the CBSE pattern that I've read, I think they are doing a lot. And at times I feel, again, I'm saying though I'm from an ICSE stream, but I feel, yes, the CBSE pattern has got an upper hand somewhere over the ICSE pattern. Because regardless of what field we talk about, this code that I said, and as both our speakers said, they hit the nail on the head, as there is no limit to learning, and the multidisciplinary educational approach mentioned in the NEP 2020 is the correct step taken towards promoting the same. I've already spoken about this liberal arts, because this is one field where, and now when I had attended the IC3 conference and I got a chance to meet the counselors of many schools, I found that most of the universities, because OP Jindal had come to our school, then Shivani University, Ashoka University, Flame University. So when I got a chance to interact with these people, I found that they all believe that this multidisciplinary skill, stream or education will really help and would lead to the holistic development of the personality as well. Yes, the holistic development, which means, again, developing, of course, intellectual, mental, physical, emotional, and social skills. And this intent to help meet life's demands and challenges. One thing I was really impressed about when ma'am said that, all the subjects are integrated together and then they are taught. Though I have not had an experience of this, to be very frank, let me be very honest, but I would definitely like to learn from you all, if I get a chance to, that this integrated learning, how can they really help the students? Because I want to see it happening in hand. I think God will give me a chance, and of course, to come to your schools and see that, and I'll be very happy to do that. It has been clearly established in the past that focus on pre-service and in-service teacher significantly impacts learning outcomes of students. The multi-pronged approach adopted by NEP 2020 is likely to revitalize the teacher education, allow bright students to opt for integrated teacher education programs as a matter of choice rather than by chance. Yes, a matter of choice rather than by chance. Interventions like national professional standards for teachers contribute to qualitative changes in teachers' pedagogic transaction. Simultaneously, efforts will also have to be made to phase out the subpar teacher training institutes. Well, another thing that I like about collaborative learning is we run a program called Junior Youth Empowerment Program. Now, in this particular program, class 9 students go to teach the students of class 6. Then class 10 students go and teach the students of class 7. Class 11 students go and teach the students of class 8. And what we have found is that the children, those who are teaching and those who are learning, there's a beautiful rapport between them. And they understand the chapter more and in a better way from their seniors. And many of the students who really needed a little push, a help, hand-holding, have really come up beautiful. Well, I will end with Dr. Abdul Kalam's quote. Enlightened citizenship has 3 components: education with value system, religion transforming into spiritual force, and creating economic prosperity through development. We repose faith in our teachers to become torchbearers for the young generation and shape India's development and sustained progress in the right direction. Unquote. Thank you so much. And once again, I really thank JGU for inviting me to this panel because I've met the wonderful speakers today. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much for those beautiful reflections and for bringing out the importance of, each one teach one, and also the whole importance of experiential learning that you have highlighted through your talk, the importance of a liberal education and the importance of a holistic multidisciplinary education, which is at the heart of today's conversation. Actually, we have run out of time, and I thought because we are one speaker less, we will have more time, but I just want to give the platform once again to each one of you, and we can go the same way. And quickly, if I may ask all the panelists to keep their remarks very brief, but according to you, one or two concrete steps that we must take going forward, because you spoke about what are the things that NEP represents and what can be done. You spoke about the challenges therein and what could be possible pitfalls. So if we have to take away some concrete outcomes of the conversation that we've had today, if I may request each one of you to tell me at least one or two concrete steps that we can collaboratively take as an institution of higher education and as school educators that we can do together going forward that will help towards realizing the vision. And we've all agreed that the vision itself is wonderful. So Ms. Nambiar, 1-2 points very briefly. You have to unmute, ma'am.
Yeah, sorry. I think if you are talking about preparing our students with a multidisciplinary approach in preparation for college, right? I think the first thing that schools will need to do is understand how to implement it, which means, of course, you can do a soft implementation where you take one concept and work with that as an integrated project and, see how that pans out, and then extend it to other projects or other events or other concepts that can be done. So that's one easy start point, if I was to say, for schools who are attempting integrated or this multidisciplinary approach. I think that's one. The second, I think, is, and I think everybody has spoken about it, is, of course, empowering teachers. Without the teachers having this necessary knowledge and skill set on how to approach learning multidisciplinarily, I think that is going to be very difficult to implement if the teachers don't have the necessary skills and knowledge for it, which also means that the way you structure school time for your teachers will need to change. There will need to be time assigned for teachers to develop skills, as well as time assigned for teachers to collaborate to present or provide an opportunity for a student to work in a multidisciplinary manner. And that I'm talking about purely from a school point of view. But when I'm talking about integration with or having a dialogue with the universities, which is what you were asking me, I'd say the other question will be also is what kind of communication can the students have an understanding of what multidisciplinary learning expectations are in a college, right? How does a school prepare them for it? What is it? What are the skills that the students need to have to be successful in a college environment? Because there is, besides, of course, academic knowledge, a lot of skills that the children will need to have to be successful in a higher education space. So I think these are some of the small things that, and I think I've given more than two. Sorry about that.
Oh, no, please. Thank you very much for sharing those. Dr. Sahni.
Yeah. So I think what I would want is that more openness in the colleges and the universities to welcome students from schools to visit them and be a part of the campus for some time, maybe for a week at least, for the courses that they are looking forward for, and understand how the nuances of it. So I would suggest that, though of course just a couple of colleges are doing that, but more and more openness towards this, so that it really empowers the students to make an informed choice.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, absolutely. And I think more and more of this needs to get done in order to be able to, sorry, there's a power cut. And therefore, everything is sort of dark at my end. But yes, well taken, that point, Dr. Sahni. Mr. Sharma.
I will focus on basically, we talked a lot, I will focus on assessment part. So multiple ways of assessment, for that teachers need to be trained, and this assessment should be based on the pedagogy. So what pedagogy is used to teach a particular topic, and same way assessment also should be done. It should not be a same method, and focus on formative assessment. Then when I was talking about transition of students from senior secondary to college level, more exposure can be provided either through online or physical basis, and exposure to multiple choices in future. And if it is provided from 9th standard onward, I think students will be aware ki what subject choice should he or she should make in 11th standard, because wrong choice of the subjects also hampers the career of the students, and teachers sometimes they are not trained for that one. So more and more exposure is required. Even as a leadership, as a principal, I feel a leader also should be exposed more and ready to adapt and absorb as early as possible, because there is no time left. If we procrastinate the thing, it will hamper the new generation. So these are my inputs. Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful thoughts. Thank you very much. Ms. Kale, over to you.
I would only focus on two things. That is, active learning is very important. That is learning by doing, and active involvement of the students in teaching as well. And the next thing that I would like to take up is that we need to turn the students into global citizens by implementing the 6 C's: critical thinking, collaboration, citizenship, character, communication, and creativity, along with the 17 SDGs. Thank you.
Thank you for keeping it short and pointed. We've really run out of time now. We've really overshot. So thank you very much. There's so much to learn from this conversation and Thomas to take forward. And on behalf of OP Jindal Global University, I want to thank each and every one of the panelists for their gracious sparing of their time, for sharing your critical and very, very insightful reflections on the topic. I want to once again extend my deepest gratitude to Ms. Sunita Nambiar, Dr. Shivani Sahni, Mr. Rajesh Sharma, and Ms. Lipika Kale. Thank you so much. And I do hope that the conversation does not end here, and we can continue to have these conversations and collaborate in new imaginative ways, and contribute in whatever way, even if it is in a minuscule way, towards realizing the vision of NEP going forward. So thank you once again. Thank you for joining in, and we really look forward to interacting with you in the future.